Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today in this video lecture, I'll be discussing as well as analyzing the critical aspects of the famous short story, The Happy Prince by Oscar Wilde. I'll not be reading the text in detail. What I'll be doing is I'll simply focus or try to provide you with a very brief overview of the short story. So let's start with the analysis. So first of all, I'll try to focus or I'll try to analyze the title of the short story, which is The Happy Prince. Because the very moment we read the title, The Happy Prince, it appears to us as if it is the story of a happy prince. But as we proceed and as we read the story, we find that it is not about a prince who is actually happy, but it is about a prince who is very, very sad inside. On the outside, people feel that the prince had led a very good life and he had been very happy in his life. Yes, that's true. As long as he was alive, he led a life of pleasure until the moment when he understood what misery is, until the moment when he realized, when he saw that how the people of his city were suffering, how miserable their life was, and how much poverty-stricken they were. So, as the story begins, we find that the happy prince is now dead. So, his statue has been erected on a column. So, since it is a high column, and from there he is able to, see the entire city, its people, and the kind of life that they are leading, and this makes the prince, the happy prince, very, very sad. Why? It is because he realizes that while he was alive, he never got to taste sorrow. And he never even showed any curiosity to know what laid beyond those lofty walls which surrounded the palace where he lived. But so he led a happy life. He danced, he sang, and he did not even realize what kind of misery people were undergoing beyond the wall that surrounded, beyond those walls which surrounded the palace. So one day what happens, what we find is that suddenly we find that a swallow appears. Okay, and the swallow is on his way to Egypt because he aspires to visit Egypt, and then he finds that while he is sleeping between the feet of the statue of the happy prince, a drop of water falls on his face, falls upon him. And in this way, he finds that 3 consecutive drops simply drench him. And then when he looks up, he finds that the happy prince is crying. But before that, let's talk about the swallow a little bit. So what we find that the swallow was in love with the most beautiful reed. So which means that he was attracted by the external beauty of the reed. But since he always aspired, to go to Egypt, so he felt that since he loves the reed and since he himself is fond of traveling, so she should be, as his wife, she should also love traveling. But what happens? The reed, she refuses to leave her place, and when she is asked by the swallow, will you come away with me? And she refuses because she was so attached to her own home that she simply refused to leave her own place. And so after that we find that the swallow leaves her, and this shows, reflects his aspirations towards Egypt, and at the same time we understand that how much importance the swallow gave to his own concerns, to his own desires, which, made him place his own interest above everything. He didn't even bother about the health of the relationship. He didn't even bother about his relationship with the reed. He didn't even bother about the reed. What mattered to him the most was his own concern, was his own desire. So he left, and then after that, when he flied all day long, so in order to take rest, he lie down between the feet of the happy princess statue. And then the happy prince relates the story of his boyhood, that how what kind of life he led. So he says that when he was alive, he had a human heart, but now he has got a heart which is made of lead. Now he has got a leaden heart. And he also confesses before, he admits before the swallow that since he led a very happy life, and he had all kinds of pleasures in his life, so he did not bother to know, he didn't even show any kind of curiosity to know what was there beyond those walls which surrounded the palace. So he says that everything about him was so very beautiful. But now he says that now when I am dead, and now when I am on this column, standing as a lofty statue, I am able to see the suffering of the people who live in this city. So he began to ask now, he requested the swallow to, he requested the swallow. Okay, so now he says that now I am able to see all the ugliness and all the misery of my city, the miserable life that these poverty-stricken people, the downtrodden, are living. So he says that although my heart is made of lead, yet I cannot help. I cannot help but weep. So I cannot stop. I cannot prevent my tears from rolling down my cheeks. And so here the happy prince, he refers to seamstress who is in that what she does, her duty is to beautify the world of the aristocrats, because she is a seamstress. So what she does, she embroiders passion flowers. Okay, and what she is doing for the loveliest of the queen's maids of honor. So, what she does, so from this first story, and this saddens the happy prince to such a degree that he requests the swallow to take a ruby, okay, from the hilt of his sword, and give it to this woman, because although she is responsible for beautifying the life, for beautifying, the world of the aristocrats, yet she does not earn enough, to protect her sick son. She does not earn enough to buy an orange for her son, which shows that she is living in an impoverished state. And after this, we find that the swallow goes away and gives that ruby to the woman while she felt asleep. So he went and he simply placed it beside her. And here we find that gradually, how the swallow would receive moral education from the prince. Because in the beginning, when the statue of the prince is admired by the swallow, it shows his naivety. Why? It shows his innocence, his lack of knowledge, his lack of experience as well. Because he admires the statue of the prince, considering it to be very beautiful, and he fails to realize at that moment how unhappy the prince is. So after that, what he does, he simply, he passes by the cathedral tower, and he entered the hut of that woman, and he found that she has already, fallen asleep, and he dropped that ruby, placed that ruby on the table beside the woman's thimble. Thimble is actually a plastic cap that is worn on the finger, so that your fingers do not get pricked by the needle. So here we see that the swallow, what he does, he fans the boy's forehead with wings, and this shows gradually how he undergoes spiritual transformation, and how this spiritual transformation takes place in him. And we find that he also feels compassionate for the sick boy. And while after he fans the boy, with his wing, the boy feels as if he's going to recover from his sickness and he'll get better. After this, the swallow flies back. And he feels that though earlier he was feeling very cold, but now he feels warmth. And here he is told by the prince that when you help other people, you feel that warmth because you have done a good action. That is because you have done a good action. This is what is said by the happy prince, because he tries to, make him understand that when we do good to others, when we help others, it provides us an immense happiness. And we also feel very happy, at the same time satisfied, and we receive that peace of mind, because this is something like this kind of any act of kindness always provides happiness to human beings. And this too happened to the swallow as well. After helping this poor woman with the ruby which he was asked to deliver by the happy prince, he felt warm. He began to feel the warmth. And later on we find that after this, the swallow, after this incident, the swallow's aspiration or his dream of flying to Egypt does not get diverted. Okay, but now in the second instance, where he's again, told the tale of this young dramatist who was starving and who was supposed to write a play for the director of the theater. So he's leaning over a desk covered with papers, and in a tumbler by his side there is a bunch of withered violets. So the condition of this artist is that he is suffering. He's not only suffering from cold, but he is also suffering from hunger. So this is also very ironical, because these people who are artists, they are poverty stricken. They are suffering from immense poverty. And we find that they are the people who produce art, for the aristocrats, for the high class people, for the upper class people of the society. But their needs are not taken into concern, are not taken care of by the upper class people, as well as by those, who are responsible for who are given the responsibility to take care of the citizens. So it is found that this boy, this young man, this artist, what he requires is help, because he neither has money because he doesn't have money to feed himself. And then the happy prince requests once again the swallow to take out a sapphire, because now he has ruby is already given to the poor woman, and now he says that only I have my eyes left. So you do one thing, you pluck one of the sapphires and you give it to the young artist. But this, the swallow says that he just cannot do that, because if he does that, he will become blind. So he cannot pluck out his eyes. But still, he does that, because he's ordered by the prince, and so he does. And after this, when he finds that there is a hole in the room, the young man had buried his head, and in the roof of his house there was a hole. So he entered, and what he did, he just placed that sapphire. And suddenly, after he woke up from his sleep, when he found that there is a sapphire, so the young dramatist says, "I am beginning to be appreciated. This is from some great admirer. Now I can finish my play." So here, when the prince, he decides and he orders the swallow to pluck out one of the sapphires from his eyes and hand it over to this young artist to help him write the play for the director of the theatre. This shows the willingness of the happy prince, to help others, to help those who are in need of money, who are suffering from poverty, who are suffering from hunger. So the happy prince, after experiencing this, after understanding what sorrow means, after realizing what suffering means, he is ready to sacrifice he's ready to sacrifice everything for others. And after this, another instance that is described in the story is the little match girl, and what has happened, like the misery that has befallen her, which actually she does not deserve, being an innocent girl, is that all her matches have fallen in the gutter and they have got spoiled. And now the happy prince is afraid that when she'll return home, she will be admonished, she will be rebuked by her father if she fails to bring some money. And then after this, we find that the girl is crying. So she doesn't even have shoes or stockings. Okay, so now the happy prince tells the swallow that pluck out my other eye and give it to her, and her father will not beat her. So what he says now is that take out my other eye, which is another sapphire, and go and give it to this young girl. And now the swallow is really shocked, because he finds that if he takes out, the other sapphire from his eyes, if he plucks it out, then he will become blind. And then but finally he has no other option, because he's ordered by the happy prince. So he does that. He plucks out the other sapphire from his eyes. Okay, and after this, he makes a decision, and it shows the swallow's loyalty, his love for the king. And it's not just his love and loyalty, but it also shows the extent of his loyalty, the depth of his love for the prince, because he decides that he's never going to leave him alone, because now he is blind. He'll stay with him always. So this is going to be a great sacrifice on the part of the swallow. Why? Because the swallows cannot survive winter, the cold, the extreme cold in northern Europe during winter season. But in spite of knowing this, that he won't be able to survive the winter, the coldness, the extreme cold of winter, still he decides to be there by the king, because now he has become blind. So we find a great transformation in the swallow, because he not only decides to sacrifice his life, but at the same time we find that he has already overcome his aspiration to travel to Egypt. So gradually we see how the character of the swallow evolves, and he comes out, he emerges as a morally upright being. And then, now when the prince has become blind, he just tries to, make him happy, make him feel good, or distract his mind. And he talks about the several, he tells him several stories of whatever he had seen in strange lands, and this he does deliberately in order to distract the prince's attention, and in order to also make him feel good. But we find that here mystery gets replaced with misery. Why? Because the happy prince doesn't get interested in these tales that are narrated to him by the swallow. Instead, he prefers reality, because now he knows that one should, according to the prince, one should have knowledge of reality. And reality means this real world, which consists of inequality, which consists of injustice. So according to the happy prince, there is no point in clinging to the world of imagination. There is no point in clinging to the world of fantasy. Instead, one should gather knowledge. One should be well acquainted with the real world, where there is inequality, where there is injustice, because he considers that this knowledge is the most valuable knowledge on earth. So after this, we find that the swallow is asked by the prince that you go, and he is ordered to fly over his city and come and tell him what he saw. And after he travels over the city, he flies over the city, the swallow comes back and tells him that what he saw was that the rich people were busy in their merrymaking. They were enjoying the warmth of the hearth, the fireplace, while the poor people, the beggars, were outside. They were starving. They were not only starving, but they were also suffering from the extreme cold. So here winter, if you see winter as well as the swallow's observation, okay, it makes the difference, the distinction between the rich and the poor all the more deep, all the more acute, all the more extreme, because it makes us realize that although there is winter, but the rich people, having all the facilities, having all the basic necessities, they are able to enjoy their life. They are also able to enjoy the winter. Okay, but as far as the poor people are concerned, they are deprived of everything. They are suffering from cold, and they are suffering from hunger as well. So at the same time, there he also refers to another instance where he found that the two little boys, okay, they were just lying in each other's arms because cold. But then we find the watchman coming and admonishing them. He admonishes them for nothing, because it appears as if for the watchman, it is he's not at all interested in solving those problems which emerge because of this inequality that exists in society. So he is not interested, he is not bothered about dissolving these differences. Okay, instead what he does, it shows his corruption, that he is not even being loyal to his own duty. Instead, what he is doing something worthless. He is simply for nothing rebuking these two little boys. And now finally we find that the happy prince is ready to also get rid of, or let's say he is also ready to sacrifice his gold skin, because now he requests the swallow to take every leaf of gold from his body. And leaf by leaf you must take it off and give it to my poor, because the living always think that gold can make them happy. Yes, this is when the prince was alive. Okay, he was also happy because he had money, he had life full of pleasure, full of happiness. But after his death, when he came across the miseries of the common man, he felt it from inside. He felt that how difficult it is for anyone to survive without food, without money. So now the final sacrifice made by the happy prince is that he decides that that the swallow should take off leaf by leaf, golden leaf from his body. So he sacrifices his golden skin as well, and this he does, and after that those are given to those little boys, and immediately there was a drastic change in the expression of these boys. They felt happy, their faces grew rosier, they laughed, and they began to play games in the street. And now the winter comes in, and along with that, frost. Here I would like to point out that here at this point, the moral education of the swallow gets completed. And the relationship that is shared between the relationship that is shared between the happy prince and the swallow is like that of an older men as well as younger men. Just as the young people, they get advised, they get properly guided in their life, so is the case with the swallow, because here we find that the swallow also gets morally transformed, morally educated by the happy prince. But now finally, when we are about to come to the end of the story, we find that the swallow dies, and the happy prince, he expresses his gratitude. He expresses his gratitude towards the swallow and asks him that now he can leave. And he says that I am happy that you are going to Egypt at last, and he says that no, I am not going to Egypt, I am going to the house of death. And after uttering these words, we find that the swallow dies at the feet of the happy prince. So the very this tragic death of the happy prince indicates his loyalty, his deep love and loyalty for the happy prince. Why? Because he could have easily left the happy prince and went on his own way, but that he did not do. After he was made to help the poor people in the city, gradually what happened? His character developed. Transformation took place in the swallow, and that made him feel pity. It is the first stage of compassion, which made him feel pity for the happy prince, and his love for the king, his respect for the king grew, became more and more profound. And it is because of his love and loyalty for the happy prince that the swallow sacrifices his life. And here, on the contrary, we find the mayor and the town councillors, who in the very beginning of the story appreciated the statue for its beauty. Now they say that it is a little better than bigger. Why? Because now the statue is no longer in that decorated, ornamented state. And so the beauty of the happy prince is no longer there. And it is very ironical that, the art professor at the university, he says, as he is no longer beautiful, he is no longer useful, which means that usefulness of a person, usefulness of an individual depends on the external beauty. And we find that how these people, give importance to external beauty. They are only concerned, the mayor, the town councillors, they are only concerned about their own wants, they are only concerned about their own reputation. And when it was decided that now this statue will be removed, and instead of the statue of the happy prince, another statue will be built. So we find that all of them, they began to quarrel. And that quarrel reflects, their desire for how important it is to them their own reputation, their own image. And these town councillors appear to be puppets, because whatever is said by the mayor, we find them repeating it immediately after. So here the professor is also satirized by Oscar Wilde, because we know that the happy prince, the beauty of the happy prince lies in his beautiful heart, lies in his compassion that is there in his heart, and in his sacrifice as well. We as readers, we do not judge the happy prince by his external appearance. Instead, for us, he appears to be an emblem of sacrifice, an emblem of goodness, an emblem of compassion, a man who is ready to sacrifice his everything in order to do to others. And not only that, through his actions, he is also able to morally educate the swallow and transform him as a being as well, making him emerge as a morally upright, spiritually enlightened being. And later on, when it was decided finally that all that the statue will be melted, it was found that the heart, which was made of lead, though after the death of the swallow, it gets broken, it gets split into two pieces, but still it is found that it doesn't get melt. And that is very, very symbolic. Why? Because the heart symbolizes the loyalty, the love of the happy prince, his compassion. So it means that although he is no longer there, although the statue is deprived of all the ornaments, and although the leaden heart has broken into two pieces, yet it still has in it loyalty, love, and compassion. But it is not understood, by the workers who are who are given the responsibility to melt it, and that highlights their ignorance. It's not that, out of any malice or out of any evil intention they are trying to melt it, okay? But it shows that, that they are much ignorant and they are much inferior to the happy prince. And it is only, out of ignorance that they are trying to melt the leaden heart of the statue. And finally, we find that the reward that is given to the happy prince and the swallow. "Bring me the two most precious things in the city," said God to one of his angels. And the angel brought him the laden heart and the dead bird, that is the dead body of the swallow. So in this way we find, and here it is an allusion to Christian, to the Christian parables that are there in the Bible. And this is how we find how the happy prince along with the swallow are rewarded for their kind deeds. They are rewarded for their generous deeds. And what kind of reward do they receive from God? That they are rewarded an eternal life in paradise. And these two things, one is the dead body of the bird, of the swallow, and the laden heart. To God, these two things appear to be the most precious, and that's why he decides to bring those two things to paradise and give them a respectable position in paradise. So we find that although, on the earth, where we enjoy material pleasures, earthly pleasures, okay, all these come to an end. But if we ever perform any deed of kindness, if we ever perform, any act of compassion, then that remains forever, and that is also rewarded. So the bottom line, or the message that is conveyed by this story by Oscar Wilde, is that we should not value anything on the basis of external appearance. Rather, we should try to look into the inner goodness. And in order to have happiness in life, or in order to be happy in life, we should all have, compassion for others. We should always try to empathize with those who are in misery. We should always try to have compassion for those people who are suffering, and always try as much as possible to do good to others, because it would not only help those who are in need of that, but at the same time it will make us feel good and lend us or bless us with a peace of mind. And with this, we come to the end of the analysis of this short story, The Happy Prince. I hope you like it, and it helps you in reading the text as well. So if you find my lecture helpful and as well as intelligible, so do subscribe to my channel. Until then, bye-bye.